Welcome to Cardinals Cover 2 with Craig Grialou and Mike Jurecki. Cardinals Cover 2 is brought to you by Arizona Cardinals Podcasts. Visit azcardinals.com/podcasts. From the Dignity Health Arizona Cardinals Training Center, here's Craig Grialou and Mike Jurecki.
So, MJ, you get enough to eat?
Yeah. I mean, did you go up for seconds?
I did not. No, I did not.
I actually went up and got some cookies.
Okay. That's fair. The Arizona Cardinals team president, Michael Bidwell, had a back patio barbecue for all of us here at the Dignity Health Arizona Cardinals Training Center ahead of basically the team arriving on Monday for off-season strength and conditioning workouts, and he couldn't have picked a better day. I mean, it's absolutely beautiful outside here in Tempe.
Yeah, and the coaches were out there. You know,
everyone
was out there, all the employees. So I mean, we got the email earlier in the week, and it was one of those days you didn't have to leave the building and go for lunch.
Yes, it was very nice. So appreciate that, and it was a great way to cap off the week. And we'll further do that here with Cardinals Cover 2 as we take off here on this Friday afternoon. Let you know what's ahead on the show. Nick Bosa, Quinnen Williams. The Cardinals, according to reports, continue to do their due diligence when it comes to the number 1 overall pick. We'll be joined by ESPN's Chris Mortensen to talk Cardinals offseason and, of course, the draft. Speaking of Michael Bidwell, he takes us inside the annual league meeting and a pretty cool get-together with all 32 owners. You don't want to miss that. Plus, of course, your questions via social media using the hashtag CardsCover2, hashtag CardsCover2 using the number 2 to get involved in the show. We'll do that a little bit later on here. A lot of questions and a lot of them dealing with the draft. But first things first, the news of the day. And I'm just going to read this as it was posted at 8 a.m. this morning. Quote, despite being the subject of rampant trade speculation, Arizona QB Josh Rosen is expected to report to and participate in the start of the Cardinals offseason workout program on Monday, unquote. That is, ESPN's Adam Schefter posted that to his Twitter account. He later added, quote, some players who have been subject of trade speculation have declined to report for workouts, unquote. Now, that last part is true. If you've got if your name is in there or if you're looking to get in a contract, a new one, or an extension, yeah, guys, we'll kind of use this. But remember, there's a couple of things. This is voluntary. You don't need to show up. Number 2, why wouldn't Rosen show up? He's under contract, and there's a brand new offense coming in to his sophomore season. And regardless of what's out there, he's not the first player. He won't be the last player that is dealing with trade speculation. And if you're a player who's under contract with all of this, you just have to kind of go about your day-to-day until you're told otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, he is under contract, but you said it is voluntary. Now, I think I would have been more surprised if he didn't show up. I mean, he's learning a new offense. He's the starting quarterback as of today. I mean, obviously, we got the draft coming up, but it would have been more of a surprise, and so I don't think anyone's surprised here. I think everyone anticipated, unless they would have got smoke signals or, was coming from the agent or was somebody leaked this to Adam Schefter. But for the most part, I think they were expecting him to be here.
And we haven't heard from Josh all offseason, and we know he's been very outspoken on certain subject material in the past. And we've always speculated, at least me personally, I try to put myself in someone else's shoes. How do you feel when this is happening? And you would have thought if it really, truly bothered him, he would have said something. Either to someone he knows back in Los Angeles, they used to cover him at UCLA, gone on Instagram, on Twitter, whatever, social media. Well, we haven't heard anything.
Yeah, and just getting back in the building and I wouldn't say routine because the next couple of phases do change where you get to do more on-field stuff, but you get a chance to be in the meetings and try to figure out, the new offense. So, he's a professional. I'll give him credit because, he could have made a decision or he could have gotten bad advice, but status quo right now. And I'm sure when he comes here, guys will look forward to seeing him. I'm sure he's kept in contact with probably, some of the guys on the roster. We know that him and Christian Kirk and that rookie class, they're attached for life just because they spent so much time together, even in those meetings last year until late June. But, I think it's important that he's here, and I'm glad he made the right decision. We'll see what happens next week.
Yeah, it's certainly going to get a lot busier next week when the players start to return. Again, off-season strength and conditioning program begins on Monday, and of course, you got draft meetings working their way up to April 25th when the Cardinals have the #1 overall pick. We'll have much more on the draft here on this show, but also want to give a shout-out to Taylor Holmes here with the Cardinals. The Cardinals Caravan that we've been talking about for the last 6 weeks or so, that's her doing. And the Cardinals have stopped in Yuma, Show Low, Holbrook, and then this week it was Prescott, and it was Buda Baker who made the player appearance.
Hey, Bird Gang, it's Buda Baker here on our way to Prescott, Arizona to go see the Cardinals Caravan.
Good luck this season.
Thank you, man. Have a good one.
I think that we need more of this kind of thing in our community because the Cardinals are so important to everyone in Arizona.
Go Cardinals!
It just helps bring them together, and you see people, all different kinds of people out here, and they all share the love of football and the love of the Cardinals.
Prescott loves the Cardinals!
Hey, everybody. Thanks for coming. I'm excited for this season. Go Cards.
Baker's first public appearance since the number change, now wearing number 32, and I got to be honest, it's going to take some getting used to. There's just certain numbers, and then you wear a number for so long, and then you make a number switch, and if it's a number switch to something that we've all grown accustomed to, Tyrann Mathieu, 32, Calais Campbell, 93, players that are no longer here but made their mark here with the Cardinals, and all of a sudden someone new comes in and starts wearing that number. It takes some getting used to. The other one is number 90, Darnell Dockett, Robert Kimdichie. It's going to take a little while.
Yeah, Calais, 93 wore, and then, Buda Baker, he actually said that it was weird signing number 32 versus number 36. That's probably the biggest adjustment for him, but he's wearing the number. He looks good in it, and it won't take me very long because he's not playing close to the line of scrimmage, at least initially. He's playing safety, so it makes sense where you can see him now on the field.
Props to Baker, DJ Humphries, Mason Cole, and Corey Peters. Those were the 4 players who participated in the Cardinals Caravan, giving up part of their offseason. And you said it, MJ, each visit attracted more than 100 fans, so a great turnout. And this is something the Cardinals have been doing for almost a decade now, visiting their various radio affiliates across the state. So the other thing I'll add to this, I had a little birdie tell me that that helicopter ride and something that Corey Peters experienced was a little uneasy up in the bird.
Well,
flying.
I think I would be the same way.
You know what? I can't speak from experience because I've never been in a helicopter, but yeah, I'm sure it's much different than the airplane where it's pressurized and it's a little bit more. I don't know, more like I wouldn't say safer, but it looks safer.
Jimmy O.
You're higher up in the air, but
Jimmy O. Mahundro, he can contest to this. I'm white knuckles if the plane is just has
any turbulence.
Yeah.
Okay.
We came out of Seattle one year and there was something going on in the back of the plane, and I'm like, "What is going on?" And he's just relaxed, and usually he's working all day, and so he's at some point he's going to pass out. I'm like, okay, I feel more relaxed now. But yeah, anytime we had turbulence, it was like white knuckles.
What happened was we were coming back from Seattle, and the plane took off, and one of the steak dinners was not secured, and the steak juice fell on the burner, and then all this like white smoke went up there, and he literally had it looked like his eyes were held together with open with toothpicks. He's like, "What's that?" I said, "Don't worry, it smells like a glorious barbecue. If it smelled like something else,
true
I
story.
would be, yeah." I said it's
I used
only
to sit
barbecue.
next to him about the flight. Yeah, it's true story he's telling you.
It smelled like barbecue.
I didn't want to look back. I was just sitting in my seat like, okay, is this going to go away? But you could smell the good food that they were going to serve us.
Okay. See, it
all worked out.
You have to look at it positively.
Yeah. Once you get in the air, food's coming. They actually give you food when you're going on the plane, so you can kind of, get a little bit in your belly.
Yeah, some of those rules that normal people every day, Monday through Sunday, that have to fly, commercial.
Yeah,
it's a little different.
Oh,
when
there's
you fly on the
great
charter.
perks, great perks.
By the way, azcardinals.com/caravans for more information on the Cardinals Caravan. And again, congratulations to everyone involved. And there are certainly fans, not just in Maricopa County, but across the state and, of course, across the country. And as we've heard here on Cardinals Cover 2, across the world as well. We'll get into some of your questions a little bit later on here using the hashtag CardsCover2. One other note, this one away from football, but good luck to Cliff Kingsbury's alma mater this weekend. The Texas Tech Red Raiders play Michigan State in the Final Four on Saturday. It's the school's first ever Final Four appearance, something Kingsbury is very, very excited about.
No question. No, we're fired up. All Red Raiders across the world. That's a big deal. And what a great team to watch, a fun team to watch, how hard they play defensively, as good as any I've ever seen. So it's going to be a fun Final Four for us.
That is Kingsbury talking with Paul Calvisi and Lisa Matthews on the Kingsbury Chronicle podcast. And a part of that interview, he's not going to the game. He says he gets nervous watching his alma mater, so he likes to watch, especially basketball, watch it by himself.
I mean, he's obviously has a relationship with the university. He knows the head coach. He spoke very highly of him at the coach's breakfast, and so he's rooting for them. Unfortunately, it didn't work out wins and losses for him, but he's in a good spot right now. But I'm kind of like that on some games. I mean, I will watch it with other people. You just don't want to have the questions. You're like, let me focus on the game. And it's not that you're being rude, so that's why you kind of isolate yourself.
I'm like that with the Super Bowl. I want to hear, and it's not the commercials, but I want to hear what's being said. And sometimes when you get a lot of people around you, you get distracted, you miss something. You're like, no, just let me focus on what's going on.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm not to be unsocial, and if I want to go to a party, I kind of figure out where I can sit and usually have packs of people outside and packs of girls talking, and so you get to the guys that know football and want to talk football. That's perfect.
I got no rooting interest, but you know what? I'll go Texas Tech.
Well, I only have Virginia, but
it doesn't matter. It's my bracket. That doesn't.
Yeah,
matter.
I know that happened, like going into the Sweet 16 or maybe the 32. But if it comes to fruition, I'll root for Texas Tech. But right now, I got Virginia.
Hope everyone is enjoying their Friday here as we come to you from the Dignity Health Arizona Cardinals Training Center and broadcasting in our Bose QC35s. As we do each and every show, go to Bose.com for more information. As we continue here on this Friday, the draft is upon us. It is coming up. We are, how many days away?
What are we? Yesterday was – do you guys have a pack there?
Let's find out.
With the third choice in the 2004 NFL Draft, the Arizona Cardinals select Larry Fitzgerald, wide receiver, University of Pittsburgh.
That's right. T-minus 20 days until the draft, and revisiting the Larry Fitzgerald draft class. I think the Cardinals are pretty happy with that selection.
There's no doubt about it.
The man is still playing, put it that way.
And Jimmy, I think we were asked, or maybe how it came up in conversation about when did the chance start. It started that day at Jackson's on 3rd in downtown Phoenix, and Jimmy alluded to me that I do remember some of the front office going there, including general manager at the time, Rod Graves, and head coach Denny Green. They made an appearance there. So they've had other parties at the Rock and Rodeo, which is close to the facility. It's a different location now when it comes to being out at the stadium. So it's interesting. That's where the chant started. I mean, it makes sense.
I will say that the chant "Larry, Larry, Larry" didn't start there. It started there as it pertains to Larry Fitzgerald.
Right.
However, you'll remember back in the 90s, Larry Centers at Sun Devil Stadium.
Yep.
There was actually, I remember specifically, a plane that was, the planes that tug the advertisements behind it.
Yeah.
There was one that said "Larry, Larry, Larry" flying over Sun Devil Stadium during a Cardinals game. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think we got some news on Larry Centers coming up.
We do. And then the other Larry, and this was funny, I don't know why it always sticks out, but one of the maybe it was his first training camp walking into State Farm Stadium, and assistant coach. No, he was playing Larry Foote. And I can't remember, someone said something, and he was always a jokester, and he's like, oh, they really like me here in Arizona. And someone at a time was like, yeah, no, there's another Larry on this team that it just doesn't, yeah.
He was very quiet the first year because they had Anquan Bolden and guys like me were touting Ben Roethlisberger, and Denny said, I'm taking the best player in the draft. We went through it. If he had 4.3 speed, Cliff Branch speed, I think Al Davis would have drafted him. They took Robert Gallery. It worked out, obviously a Hall of Famer, and you couldn't have a better guy on your roster in this community.
Yeah, and still playing, Larry Fitzgerald is the number 3 overall selection of the Cardinals, who now have the number 1 overall pick. And speaking of Larry Centers, as the NFL is once again inviting current and past players to announce selections of their team's picks. And Larry Centers will announce the Cardinals' 3rd-round pick, number 65 overall. And this is something that he's done once before. Back in 2013, he announced the Cardinals' 2nd-round selection. Do you remember who that was in 2013?
2013. That
second round.
Second round.
Linebacker.
Carlos Dansby.
Kevin Minter.
Kevin Minter. Oh,
Yeah.
2013. I was thinking
Yeah.
almost 20 years ago. Kevin Minter. Okay. Is there any relevance to that?
No, I was just I'm
okay.
trying to test your Cardinals knowledge.
Nice,
That's all.
Nice guy, but I thought you were going to go back to Denny Green's draft class.
Oh, no. It's 2013.
That's hard to top.
That
would have been
is true.
Arians' first year here.
Correct.
Gotcha.
So Larry Centers is doing that, and
That would have been the
there's-
Jonathan Cooper draft.
See, now you're
your
testing my knowledge.
Yeah, that would have been. No, that was Ken Wisenhunt draft. Now
Yeah.
we're really confusing people because they brought in Russ Grimm and they wanted to run the ball like the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Turned it into Chandler Jones.
Yeah, I think that would have been Dale Buchanan because they like Blake Bortles, but they had the 20th overall pick, and I want to say they traded down to 27. And so you mentioned Mentor, which was a need inside linebacker, and then they got John Brown and Kareem Martin in the 3rd round.
Yeah.
So I got it right now.
Got that Cardinals knowledge back on track.
Yeah, I was just figuring out, but Denny Green's draft and even Antonio Smith, besides Carlos Dansby and Darnell Dockett, that I don't know if it's going to be hard to top that.
Well, that one really laid the foundation for the Super Bowl run. I mean, winning the division championship back-to-back years and going into the Super Bowl, that was what kind of really started things for this Cardinals organization.
No doubt. I mean, but you got to go back to even Jake Plummer when they were able to get to Dallas and knock off the Cowboys.
Absolutely.
That was huge.
Speaking of this year's draft, of course, the Cardinals with the number 1 overall pick. And reportedly, the Cardinals this week hosted both Nick Bosa and Quinnen Williams. Both guys have been in the news recently. The Cardinals late last week, according to reports, had dinner with Bosa in Florida. And I saw this, I can't remember, I think it was Ian Rappaport tweeted this out, that Bosa, when all is said and done as far as his pre-draft workouts or his pre-draft visits are concerned, he will have met with each of the top 6 teams in the draft: the Cardinals, 49ers, Jets, Raiders, Buccaneers, and Giants.
That makes sense. And you just don't know who's going to move up. But, I mean, he's not going to do any private workouts away from the team's facility. So he's going to rest his laurels on throwing the tape. Medically, according to his father, he's been 100% for maybe late November, early December. And here we're approaching, April and May. So unless somebody's going to move up, but if I'm his agent, he's going to be the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd overall pick in the draft.
All right. With Bosa, though, last week, this week, at the Combine, that's 3 at least, according to reports. We know they did meet officially with Bosa at Indianapolis. Mean anything? Can you read anything into that?
Yeah.
All the speculation and all the mock drafts point to Kyler Murray, and all of a sudden it's more meetings number-wise.
Well, if somebody calls and blows them away, they got to make a decision. The backup to me would be, try to trade down and acquire more picks. Yeah, I think it means something, but I think they're also doing their due diligence. I mean, I think on paper, and you can make a case for Devin White from LSU and Josh Allen, even though I think he's a little bit different than a legitimate pass rusher. He drops back in coverage. Really quality player at Kentucky. He put up a lot of sacks, really good open field tackler. But I think if you just handicap it as of today, and there could be more names involved, but I really think it's between Murray, Bosa, and Williams. But I also think Devin White is an opportunity, but I don't think you would take him at number 1.
Well, and you get 30 of these visits, and I'm sure, I wouldn't say all of them, but I'm sure there's a handful of them because you never know. I mean, one, someone could fall or you could, trade down, but then there's that future planning. 2, 3, 4 years down the line, someone becomes available via trade, someone becomes available via free agency, and everyone saves everything. It's not just game film, it's your notes that you take.
Oh, yeah.
And then these visits all of a sudden come back, and if you made a decent impression or just the opposite impression, no, we don't want to touch that guy. Remember 5 years ago when we had dinner with him? No, we're not touching him. But I think that all plays into, it's not just about sometimes the current year, but might be the years advancing.
Yeah, I mean, basically you have an aerial scout, and we'll take Bosa as an example. So he puts a grade on him. And then you have your regional scout. He puts a grade on him. And then you're going to have your coaches. They're going to put a grade on him. And then you're going to have the top guys, and Steve Keim and his staff put a grade on him. And then they come up with a grade. So they can go back to that, folder, through the internet and say, oh, this is what we thought of him 5 years ago. How has he produced? What has he done over the last 5 years? Is it because of injury he's available? But it's really just doing your due diligence. And you normally, every team can bring in 30 players, but you have some kind of background on him now. Personality, what was he like in person? What was his manners when we took him out to dinner? Was he looking at his phone? There's so many things. So 4 or 5 years down the road, you can go back to the folder and go, this is what we know about this player. We don't have to do research from day one. You still want to call his position coach, head coach. Maybe the strength coach. How is he when it comes to his work ethic? So there's a lot of factors, but there's nothing wrong with doing due diligence. Just like you see companies and Fortune 500 companies bring in 5 or 6 guys when it comes to interviews, and they're going to only hire one guy. I can tell you this, Al Davis, he would bring in guys knowing he wasn't going to hire them, because he told them who was going to be on his coaching staff, but he wanted to pick their brain on what they were doing, and he would employ into his offense. So you're kind of stealing information, but also you have this folder now where you can go back and look and go, it hasn't been 10 years, it's been 4 or 5. Now we have a better understanding who this person is.
So Bosa will have met with the top 6 teams with regards to Quinnen Williams. After all of his meetings, 8 of the top 9 teams he will have at least sat down with, and the lone exception is the Lions. And Quinnen Williams certainly impressed in Indianapolis at the Combine because of how fast he was able to run and just the agility, the movement of his feet. But there's a lot of people believe that as much attention on Kyler Murray and Nick Bosa, that it might be Quinnen Williams that we're talking about in 5-7 years that was the real star of this draft, because a lot of people believe, or at least see, a lot of Aaron Donald in him. And that might be a little bit on.
But Aaron Donald, he went 13th overall.
That's true, but I mean, just the comparison.
Sure.
That's high praise, and it might be a little unfair, a lot unfair, but certainly a lot of people are impressed just with the ability, the athletic ability of someone that size, especially on the interior of the defensive line.
Listen, I've said this before. Don't mean to be redundant, but if he was a pass rusher or played a skill position, you don't see running backs go number 1. Normally, you see left tackles go, maybe a Keyshawn Johnson, a wide receiver, but usually quarterback trumps that. So, but again, if he played a different position, because we talk about building your roster, quarterback, left tackle, pass rusher, and corner, if he would just slid over one position, he'd be in that conversation. And I still think he's in the mix. And if you're the Niners, they drafted Solomon Thomas. I don't think he's peaked yet, or maybe his ceiling is where he's at. I think Eric Armstead has been a good draft pick. Obviously, look at DeForest Buckner. He's been a good draft pick. They don't really need interior, but Lynch has come out and said, we're going best available player, but you know how I feel. It's a little bit of a need. You would think Bosa would be a no-brainer, and, of course, if that happens, if the Cardinals choose not to take him, then you're going to have to deal with him for the next X amount of years. But Quinnen Williams is worthy of the first overall pick.
You mentioned the 49ers. Did you read the story on what he did when he met the 49ers in Alabama? They asked him, what restaurant do you want to go to in Alabama? Favorite restaurant? IHOP.
Perfect.
Really? I mean,
college kid.
Yeah, but like you got a free dinner coming to you.
You can get good meals.
Oh, absolutely. But, like a steak or something?
Yeah. You didn't say the Waffle House.
He wanted the Rudy Tooty Fresh and Fruity. let him have the Rudy Tooty Fresh and Fruity.
He's been winding
We need to find out what the order was, because if that was truly the order, that is something that would definitely stick in the back of my mind. It's like, I want that guy on my team.
Yeah, how do you not go to IHOP and get the Rudy Tooty Fresh and Fruity?
When you put it in that sense, Jimmy, you're right. He's probably tired of steak and potatoes.
That's true. All right.
These guys have been on the banquet tour. I wonder how much weight they've gained. And then you get drafted, and everyone's patting you on the back how great you are, and it's a great story. And then you got to get to work.
Your hometown. What if you were going to meet with the, I don't know, X team of the NFL? What team? What restaurant would you?
It would be
go?
an Italian restaurant.
Okay.
I thought it would be Cuomo's in Niagara Falls. Good Italian restaurant. Now they have pierogies if you're Polish. I don't know if he would enjoy that. But they have different foods. But chicken wings are the go-to in Buffalo or Niagara Falls.
Does anybody from Buffalo actually go to like the Anchor Bar?
Yeah.
I mean, or is it all tourist trap?
More tourists, but if you bring people in town, it's kind of like if you're in Vegas, you take them to the Strip, but you rather go to other places that are just as good, and it's not a tourist
and
trap.
not as crowded.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like going to San Francisco. Everyone wants to go to ScoMa's. That's the restaurant.
That's where you would take them?
Well,
I think Wolf and Calvisi are the only ones that say that.
There are a lot of restaurants a little bit closer, to downtown that you can find excellent seafood. So,
and we have a lot of
ScoMa's.
That's not bad, Holmes. That's pretty good.
And we have a lot of great steakhouses here in Arizona. You don't like steak?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Whenever you want to pay.
Okay.
Just
all
let
right,
me
Craig,
know.
Syracuse Orange. You're going to be a top pick. Where are you taking them?
There's two, and I actually had there's barbecue, Dinosaur Barbecue.
Okay.
And then there's a Spaghetti Warehouse if you want Italian. So what do you want? You want barbecue or you want Italian?
Probably Italian.
Spaghetti Warehouse. That's where we had my graduation dinner.
Nice. Fine graduate from Syracuse University.
By the way, it's a good thing we had lunch. Otherwise, this just is not working out here on a Friday afternoon. So well fed. We're good to go. Continue on with the show. azcardinals.com continues its the one at one series, looking back at the last 30 number one overall selections and that player's impact on the team and the league. Since our show on Wednesday, the tag team of Darren Urban and Kyle Odegaard revisited the 2000 and 2001 top picks. In 2000, it was Courtney Brown. Didn't leave much of an impression.
That didn't pan out.
In 2001, Michael Vick. The Falcons actually moved up to select Vick, making a deal with the Chargers, who selected their quarterback with the first pick of the second round, which happened to be Drew Brees. Not a bad selection. Of course, he didn't stick around with the Chargers for very long. Chargers also got LaDainian Tomlinson in that draft with the fifth overall selection, and the Cardinals had the second overall pick, and that was Leonard Davis, who had a very good career with the Cardinals.
Yeah, I want to say that was Bobby. Bobby Beathard was in both Washington and San Diego, so he may have had that. Now, if we didn't have 32 teams at the time, so Brees would have been our first-round pick.
Ah, that's right.
And I think he's the last quarterback. Now, he wasn't a first-round pick on paper. I think the last Big Ten quarterback to go in the first round, Kerry Collins.
Okay.
It's been a long time.
That was a run of Penn State players that just didn't pan out very well.
No, but he got to this
decent, but just not.
No, he had some issues off the field,
yeah.
Carolina, but the Giants took him pretty high. Now, my comp for Kyler Murray is, I know people will talk about Mayfield. I think he's thicker, Russell Wilson. I think it's Mike Vick. Mike Vick was 6 feet, about 211 pounds. Again, people will talk about his arm strength. I think Murray is more accurate from inside the pocket. Mike Vick ran at 4.25. We don't know what Murray would run. Based on the weight, I would say more of a 4.33 or 4.35. But I think that's really the comp based on the height, weight, and the skill set.
Well, and that's what Kingsbury used as a comp when he was asked about it during the coaches' breakfast, and he did it based off of athletic ability, just because of how mobile Vic was.
Dangerous in the open field. I mean, you some of these 6'3" linebackers, 255 pounds, 240, they can't get to you because you can stop on a dime and change directions. I mean, so it could be effective in the right spot, but obviously you got to protect your body.
Coming back now to this year's draft here in 2019, and speaking of the coaches' breakfast during the annual league meeting, we had a chance to catch up with ESPN's Chris Mortensen, longtime NFL reporter. He has covered the NFL for a number of years, and we had to talk about the draft, but it wasn't the draft that we first brought up with him last week. Let's first start talking about what the Cardinals have done since free agency started. And I'll even go back to January, considering they've added over a dozen players, new faces since the end of the regular season. What do you think what this team has done so far?
Well, first of all, we knew they needed a roster makeover after watching it unfold last year. And I know there were some injuries, but so they've addressed a lot of things, and I think some of them are like, okay, these are Band-Aid approaches, and let's get through the draft and another off season. So, Cliff Kingsbury in his first year, things don't happen overnight. But, I do think that Steve Keim, the general manager, felt their roster was better than it performed. But clearly there were holes. And, one lesson we've learned, I think, from the Patriots over the years, and always have heard this from great coaches, or GMs, which is you need to build the entire 53-man roster. Because this is a game of attrition. You're going to have injuries. And so what they've done is productive. It's a move in the right direction, and you just hope that some of those guys are difference makers. You still have to have guys who can impact the game. And there's I feel like so many needs that maybe the expectations last year were not realistic.
Is there one that stands out to you? I know Suggs is the big name, but a Hicks or an Alford?
Alford actually was a heck of a good signing. I really thought that was really big. And Hicks, you're talking about a linebacker who's outstanding. Suggs brings you, like in Baltimore, they have this, culture seems to be a cliche these days, but in Baltimore, one thing they created over the years was, and kind of what Ray Lewis was the leader in the clubhouse, locker room. And then it was passed to Ed Reed. And then it was passed to Suggsy. And Suggsy was always part of that. And it was supposed to be passed to C.J. Mosley, who actually the Ravens let get away in free agency, one of their mistakes. So what Suggs is bringing, you got a team that you're building. He's bringing you a leadership. But the most remarkable thing about Suggs that, 3 years ago I would have told you the guy's washed up. And he actually got in better shape, even better shape, and he actually has an impact. Maybe he's not going to put the quarterback on the ground as frequently, but he's going to create some pressure, and he is going to create leadership, and great leadership, not just good leadership, great leadership. It's nice to have a veteran like that in a locker room who teaches some of the other guys what it's like to be a pro. And sometimes it's not always the young guys you're teaching how to be a pro. Maybe it's some of those third, fourth, fifth-year guys who still need to learn how to be a pro.
All right, so the Cardinals make a decision to move on from Steve Wilkes after 1 year. We can get into circumstances, obviously, injuries, didn't have the talent. Then they went out of the box and hired Cliff Kingsbury. You look at Kyler Murray and Josh Rosen. To me, if you hire Kingsbury, do you go all in with Murray, or do you think with the right coaching, Rosen could be the guy in the future?
Well, I personally thought that, last year we had five quarterbacks taken in the first round and 4 in the top 10. And there's always this thought, well, we know half of them are going to be busts. I never thought half of them were going to be busts. I actually thought all 5, especially the top 4, would be good, successful quarterbacks in the league, and 1 or 2 will emerge as great. Josh Rosen did nothing last year to discourage me from that thinking, given the circumstances of, all the injuries, the offensive line, even some at receiver, and so, and obviously David Johnson. But to me, it's and the changes on the coaching staff. Let's face it. To me, you would not give up on Josh Rosen based off of what you saw last year. The X factor is, you hired Cliff Kingsbury, who wants to run his offense and bring that to the NFL. Now, Cliff, I always thought was going to be an offensive coordinator in the NFL. I always understood that he wanted to be one, but it's interesting that he became a head coach. And I think that if you really want to run your offense in the NFL, you better run it with a guy like Kyler Murray, which is not saying Josh Rosen can't do it. Then it's incumbent, if you decide not to go Kyler Murray, then it's incumbent upon Josh Rosen, Cliff Kingsbury, to do what all good coaches do. We adapt to his strengths and the strengths of what I can do and make it work. So I don't know who they're going to take. I've been among those who are saying you need to take Kyler Murray. And I do think, despite Josh being what I think can be a successful quarterback, I think it would energize the city, the fan base. I think that's important because I think that does trickle down to the players. But I will say this: you have to make sure on Kyler Murray, because one part of the model, or the quarterback model, that people question the most, it's not which conference you played in now or whatever, or how tall you are. It's how many starts, how many snaps did you get? Well, Kyler Murray and Dwayne Haskins of Ohio State played one full season. I mean, Patrick Mahomes had 1,700 snaps. Russell Wilson had 1,900 snaps in college, and so forth. So it's the guys who only played one season that really make you a little bit hesitant to take that leap. But I do not think a model works where you take Kyler Murray and keep Josh Rosen. I don't think that works whatsoever. And the other issue is, if you really do think Josh Rosen can be successful and you need defensive players, and we'll just use the name Nick Bosa, why wouldn't you want a guy like that who's you think will be a 10-year player, Pro Bowl player? It needs to be, by the way. Then you could sit there and say, okay, we can't have Kyler Murray and Josh Rosen. I do think it's interesting that, at least to our knowledge, it doesn't appear to be a hot market for Josh Rosen. There may be, and we just don't know. But that's a little telling, and it's a little bit unnerving that there wouldn't be one for Josh Rosen. Because I thought, there's a guy who played in college, played successfully in college, and I thought there were certainly moments enough to be encouraged last year, given all the adversity he faced, that there would be a market for Josh Rosen. And the fact that you would take Kyler Murray wouldn't necessarily be, you're down on Josh Rosen. It's just that you're that high on Kyler Murray and Cliff Kingsbury and what he can do. And, is this the new age football that we're going to bring in, and we're going to do it with the Arizona Cardinals? So more questions than complete answers right now.
Quick question on the division as a whole.
Yeah.
Ahead of the draft, where do you see this division and the Cardinals fitting in under a new head coach going into 2019?
Well, I mean, we all see them as the fourth team in the division right now, even though San Francisco hasn't, San Francisco's picking second in this draft. But we know Jimmy Garoppolo got hurt. He looked promising the year before when they acquired him from the Patriots. They're going to have the second pick. And if the Cardinals take Kyler Murray, they're taking Nick Bosa. So already they have a pretty good front four that's going to get a lot better. And we know that championship teams have great defensive lines. And Steve Keim's not naive, ignorant to that fact, too. That's why we you can't rule out Nick Bosa being the top pick. So we're looking at the Cardinals as the fourth best team, they can call building. No team goes into a season expecting not to compete. But I think that's how we look at it. I think the 49ers will probably have the most improvement. I think the Seahawks were the surprise of the division last year. Pete totally revamped that team, and I think they're going to continue to improve. And I think the Rams come back to the pack a little bit. I think that maybe there's people have solved some of the things that Sean McVay's brought in. Now he's really smart. He'll stay a step ahead of the game, but that's kind of how I see it.
Before we let you go, I mentioned this before we started this, the quote-unquote photobomb on NFL Live with you and Larry Fitzgerald. I'm not going to ask you to share that conversation, but just Fitz as a player and then Fitz the person as well.
Well, to me, Fitz is, there's special players when you cover the league a long time that you just say, and of course now we talk about Tom Brady and Drew Brees and guys, and Phillip Rivers, and Peyton Manning was in that group. And what's unique about Fitz, he's a receiver. And yet we hold him in a different, higher esteem to the point where he's addressing owners here at the meetings. He is, but he's a guy who, what I find unique about Fitz, he's an Arizona Cardinal for life, one way or the other. I mean, as a player and maybe beyond his playing career. I mean, I know he feels that way deeply. But the photobomb was, we were doing NFL Live over there, and it was Sal Palantonio and Adam Schefter who were doing their hit for NFL Live, and I was waiting for mine, but I was standing off back behind it. I was actually joking with somebody. I said I really have a temptation to photobomb these guys, but I decided not to do it. But then Fitz comes by with his son. And it was like, hey, I was like, and then we give each other a hug, and we end up talking. And then I get a text from my wife. He said, she's laughing. She goes, "You just photobombed those guys." I said, well, "That's funny because I talked about photobombing, but I didn't intend to do it." And
Here comes Fitz.
So I'll do anything for FaceTime.
Good stuff from Chris Mortensen, who couldn't have been nicer last week during the annual league meeting. Here is someone who has covered the NFL for a number of years, decades, has seen it all. And going back to his conversation with Fitz, and I had to look this up because I know there was a connection between the two, but Chris Mortensen was the one that broke the story that Fitz was leaving Pittsburgh early and declaring for the draft. So their relationship goes back a long, long time. And then in 2016, following the Cardinals' playoff win over the Packers, Fitz, during a post-game on-field interview, so you had just beaten the Packers and there's wild celebration, but during that interview on the field, he took the time to send his well wishes to Mortensen, who at the time was battling cancer.
That story came out on that Friday.
It's why people hold Fitz in such high regard are stories like that, to where, yes, we just did something amazing as a team and as an individual, but there is a good friend of mine that is hurting right now, and it was very simple, very short, but it was funny during the annual league meeting, the photo bomb, because everyone's doing their TV hits, and they're there during ESPN's NFL Live, literally right in the center of Sal Paolantonio and Adam Schefter in the background. There's Mortensen and Fitz chatting it up.
Well, we were walking around. I'm sure we were in some.
Yeah, I'm sure, yeah.
No, we weren't photobombing anybody.
No one's going to recognize us.
We were just trying to get somebody to talk to. Mort couldn't have been nicer. At the end, he said, "Give me a call anytime." So we got his phone number, so maybe we'll talk to him closer to the draft.
Yeah, or even throughout the season as well. Was you kind of figure out more and more on what this team will look like.
As soon as he gets his number, Grialou's like, "I want that number." And I said, "You give me Tom Brady's number, I'll give you his." Yeah, that's another story for another day.
As we continue here, quick detour here on a Friday afternoon from the Dignity Health Arizona Cardinals Training Center, broadcasting and our Bose QC35s. Go to Bose.com for more information. I believe that'd be called tampering. We can't do that. All right, before we hear from the Bird Gang, for those that might have missed the latest episode of Cardinals Flight Plan, it was episode 4, New Year's Day, dealt with a lot about free agency. There was a segment in there on Chandler Jones as well, which we covered here on Cards Cover 2, but there was also a segment involving team president Michael Bidwell. He took fans behind the scenes on some of the goings-on during the annual league meeting.
Let's send it back out to Phoenix, Arizona.
There's so much interest in professional football, the National Football League, and the individual teams. You know, the sports media really is hyped up in the off season, and especially around the league meeting. There were a lot of things to talk about.
NFL Network, we are on the road at the Arizona Biltmore as the league gathers, as it does every offseason, to look back on the year that was and look ahead to a new 2019.
Like any business, you have one annual meeting, and so there's a lot of reporting that happens there, a lot of business decisions that are made there, and then rules changes. We always change playing rules and bylaws and things like that.
1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3.
One stop, talk to every owner, talk to every coach, and talk to every general manager, because we're all there.
1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3.
We've had an annual meeting every year since 1921, and the forming meeting was in 1920 at Ralph Hayes Hupmobile dealership when they formed the National Football League in Canton, Ohio. This is really cool. I'm getting goosebumps. Did you notice they're trying to put Arizona right under the front tire? It's not a good sign. I'm the first one to get run over. We took a photo. It was the first time since 1934, as I understand it, that the owners had gotten together and taken a photo, because it'd be great to juxtapose that with my grandfather in that photo if he made the photo. Every 100 years or so, we ought to get a picture together. Great job last night. That was so much fun.
Be natural. We want you to converse and feel happy.
Ready? 1, 2, 3. This is his story, so just remember that. It's making history. 1, 2, 3. That's great.
It was great to have Virginia McCaskey at the wheel, symbolically, since her father was really the original driver of the National Football League, and then Mrs. Ford in the front seat as well. And given the significance of the history and everything, it was fantastic.
Very surprised that they don't do that every year. The coaches get a picture, the general managers get a picture, but to hear Michael say that that was the first time since 1934 that all the owners gathered together for, essentially a team picture, but that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was fascinating, just the history there. And, I think over the last couple of years, because I've been covering the owners' meetings, they usually come here every 2 years, and I know the owners' families and wives, they really like the Biltmore in the area. Is that this really, besides, Larry Fitzgerald and Neas Williams and Russell Wilson, you did see him walking around, right? You usually didn't have video in there in these meetings. It was all tight-lipped, and usually you get owners coming out. You see how the lobbies were set up. You could only go to certain spots, and if they chose to stop, you could talk to them. If not, you had to wait for, them to have a impromptu press conference. So I just think now with social media and the way the NFL calendar is set up, there's a lot of opportunities for off-season stories, whether it's the draft, free agency, off-season workouts, and we get closer to training camp. So the NFL is magnetized the offseason where people want to know what's going on. And I think I told it before, but remember when Donovan McNabb was traded? Yeah. It was the first day of baseball season, and Bud Selig wasn't very happy. He was in his working out and looking at the TV, and it's all ESPN was showing Donovan McNabb going to a division opponent.
Yeah. Cardinals Flight Plan does a great job of documenting what's going on in the offseason, including the annual league meeting as well. So stay tuned for the next episode, which will chronicle what is going on in the draft as well. All right, it is that time here on a Friday. Time for the Bird Gang to sound off using the hashtag CardsCover2. Hashtag CardsCover2 using the number 2 to get involved in the show. We'll begin with Twitter, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce the last name here, but I'll just spell it out. The user is at MCKILLOPOV, and it's from London. Hi, chaps. Greetings from London. Please, can you help my understanding? Depth at any position is key. Wide receiver, running back, tight end, etc. So why not at quarterback? Why not have 2 top QBs fighting for the starting spot each week? Won't it push them both to improve and grow as players? Thank you.
I think that sounds good in theory, but I think you got to have one guy get the majority of the reps. Backup quarterbacks during the week, they don't get a ton of reps. Usually your practice squad or third-string guy is running the scout team, and he can show some flashes there. But, we'll see what they do. I mean, if they feel like that, if they make a decision to take Murray at number 1, what happens with Josh Rosen? I mean, they're not going to give him away. You wouldn't assume that. So I think you got to settle in on one guy and let him get all the reps if you want to be successful. That's not a position where you rotate players in and out. Yeah,
it's what the old adage, if you've got 2 quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks. Moving to Instagram, user at JORD_XN. N'Keal Harry or Marquise Brown at 33 if they are both available.
Well, Brown's coming off an injury, but he should be ready at some point. I don't know when that would be in off-season workouts. The main thing is you're drafting him for the next 4 or 5 years, so you're looking long-term. No disrespect towards Harry. I think he could be a good player. I think he's gritty. I know people are going to look at his 40 time. I think he'd be good as an X receiver, a big physical receiver down the field. But the connection with the Oklahoma and the offense that he played in, I would think Brown would be a better option. I'm not saying that they wouldn't consider Harry there, but I think Brown would be a better option.
And depending on what they do at number 1,
yes,
could
dictate that
factor as well. Instagram user Bob31 wants to know, who do you think is the best player on the team for his position? Best player on the team for his position.
On the Cardinals?
Yes.
Well, I mean, you would think David Johnson at running back, right? I think Chandler Jones at outside.
Just pick one, though. Just one player. I mean, if you're going to go like the best player at his position for the Cardinals,
I would say Patrick Peterson.
That's what I was thinking as well.
I mean, hard to argue 8 straight Pro Bowls. Now, I know his first year was more on special teams as a punt returner. He had 4 returns. Just the age and what he's done, I would put Patrick Peterson.
More Instagram question. User Tristan.DNZN wants to know, is there any chance the Cardinals might play in Europe in the next 5 years?
I haven't heard that. Now, they've played in Mexico and they've played in London, and, we'll see. But right now they don't have anything on the schedule. But the NFL is trying to go global. I haven't heard about Europe. I haven't heard about Japan or China. But you know that London has definitely upgraded their facilities, and to me it's a quicker flight if you can get to the East Coast to get to London. So we'll see. We have a game in Mexico this year. I want to see Rams-Chiefs, but that's not a Cardinal game.
No, but of course the NFL is always looking to expand outside the U.S.
And when you host a Super Bowl, you're giving up a home game.
Correct.
And
so
we're in line for a Super Bowl.
Keep that in mind as well. Last question via Instagram. Nick from Scotland. We are big overseas here on this Friday. Appreciate all the response.
The other guy called us chaps.
Yeah.
Is it mate?
Don't ask me that question. See, no, we have to go to figure out. We have to go to find out. London, Scotland.
Yeah.
Take the show on the road. This is perfect for a Friday. The funniest Cardinal on the roster.
Well, I mean, I would say DJ Humphries. Larry could be a prankster, but you don't see it.
Subtle.
When Trey Boston was here and he's still a free agent, between him and Brandon Williams and Rudy Ford, they would have this, and Daniel Buchanan, they would have this contest with like a...
They were more loud, though.
Gatorade, but they was just so loud and they were passionate. But I think when push comes to shove, and I don't want to exclude anybody because we don't see all the personalities when the locker room is only open for 45 minutes, but I would say Humphries. Who's your selection?
That'd be mine. You know, the one that comes to mind in past players, and this was never seen, but you always heard the stories. And we actually heard one from Mark Dalton, the Cardinals Vice President of Media Relations, Carson Palmer.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Dry sense of humor, but very funny. But he wouldn't open that up to most of us in the media.
Just follow him on Instagram.
Oh, that's
looks like he's enjoying retirement.
You know, there's one guy that doesn't really get a lot of credit for how funny he is because of the nature of his position. That's Aaron Brewer, the long snapper. He's hilarious.
Very true.
And no one really talks to him, which is probably a good thing.
Yeah.
Don't want to be talking to the long snapper after a game.
He's still waiting for his Coyote jersey.
Oh, that's right. Larry Fitzgerald, you know. But he picked up the phone.
The thing is, he's a Coyotes fan now. He goes to games, and he just wants a Coyotes, what does he wear, 46? He wants a 46 jersey.
Okay.
Larry, get on that.
Larry Fitzgerald can hook up anybody with anything in Arizona and basically anywhere.
Those are good questions today.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Global questions.
Using the hashtag CardsCover2, hashtag CardsCover2. Appreciate everyone reaching out, and we'll get to as many as we can as we get closer to the draft. We'll do some more on Monday as well. And with that, that will wrap up this Friday edition of Cardinals Cover 2. Special thanks to those behind the scenes, Tim Delaney, Jim O'Hundro, Jeremy Schnell, and Jackson Sipes. For Mike Jurecki, I'm Craig Grialou. As we leave you here on this Friday, the 2019 Arizona Cardinals cheerleaders have been announced. Here's the team, and we'll talk to you on Monday.